Good evening and konbanwa from the International House of Japan in Tokyo. Welcome to the session 5 of the Leaders Shaping the Future of the Indo-Pacific series. My name is Aiko DODEN, Special Affairs Commentator for NHK World. I'm also on the Board of Trustees at the I-House. Our topic today is the Metoo movement in Asia. How can we fight against sexual violence? We will be addressing how we may jointly fight sexual assaults and what challenges lie ahead. But we also need to probe into social norms and practices that surround the problem. And I look forward to addressing that aspect as well. Ever since the Metoo movement started in the United States, thousands of women and men across the world have come forward and joined the movement, telling their own stories. Asia was no exception. The movement has picked up momentum and developed in its own particular way in our region. Yet there are many victims who are unable to speak up. Some say it is because of the nature of the male-dominant society, where victim-blaming attitude of third parties can be quite brutal. This can lead to intense secondary victimization. Groundless rumors can quickly spread on social media, and both the volume and the substance of such rumors would no doubt overwhelm the victim. Discrimination and sanctions often target not just the victims, but even family members and their circle of friends. Goal 5 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, as many of you may know, includes the elimination of all forms of violence against women and girls. But how can Asia join hands in attaining this goal? Today's guest is Shiori Ito, who was most recently cited as one of the 100 most influential people in the world by Time magazine in 2020 for her contribution to Japan's Metoo movement and how the movement took off in Asia. Let me introduce her to you. Shiori Ito is a journalist, writer, and documentary filmmaker. Her primary focus is gender-based human rights issues. At the 2018 New York festivals, Shiori won a Silver Award for the film she directed, Lonely Death, in the social issues category. In 2017, she published the nonfiction book Black Box, based upon her own experience of rape. The book reveals the sexism in Japanese society and institutions and was awarded the Free Press Association of Japan Award for Best Journalism in 2018. Ms. Ito is also Asia Society's Asia 21 Young Leaders. Mr. Tom NAGORSKI, Vice President of Asia Society, who knows Ms. Ito well, had sent this video message for this event. So let's hear what he has to say.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be with you. And on behalf of everyone at the Global Asia Society, I thank and applaud the organizers of the Leaders Shaping the Future of the Indo-Pacific series for highlighting the work of Shiori Ito. Because really all of us, wherever we are, whatever we do, wherever we live, should be honoring and celebrating the work of this remarkable young woman. Shiori Ito was selected as an Asia 21 Young Leader in 2019. It's a very tough application process, but I have to say, in our case and in her case, the choice wasn't really a difficult one. Asia 21 Young Leaders constitute the Asia Pacific's premier network of young leaders, doing values-based work, inspiring us all in so many ways, and having great impact across the Asia Pacific in values-based leadership and public service. Shiori Ito stood apart and has continued to stand apart through her activism against sexual violence, her fight for gender equality, which has given a voice to so many women who've been silenced in the past. Such activism comes at enormous personal cost, and it has in her case. Shiori Ito has endured persistent harassment, threats, but she's also persevered to speak up and fight in court. Her supporters throughout the country demonstrated with flowers. Shiori Ito sparked a national debate in Japan on criminal law reforms. We at the Asia Society applaud her courage, her service, and her leadership. And of course, we were heartened by the fact that a year after we chose her as a member of the Asia 21 network, she was chosen by Time magazine as one of their most influential people, top 100 influential people of 2020. So we are proud to count Shiori Ito as a member of the Asia 21 network, proud to count her as a great and inspiring member of the Asia Society family, and delighted that those of you who may not know about Shiori Ito will soon know much more about her thanks to this program. Thanks so much for being with us.
That was Mr. NAGORSKI talking about you, Shiori-san.
It's very nice to see him. We had amazing summit back in 2019, and it was very inspiring to be also myself, one of the Asia 21 leader, and meeting amazing leaders from all over the world. We had amazing time, so it's nice to see you.
I'm sure he's watching. Thank you, Shiori-san, for joining the webinar today.
Thank you for having me.
You know, this event is taking place on the day our former Prime Minister, who is the president of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics Organizing Committee, announced resignation. And I think it sort of gives us a snapshot of where we are today in the context of our conversation. This news, of course, and events leading up to his resignation have grabbed the global headlines. His resignation is related to the sexist remarks made at the JOC meeting earlier this month, that, and I quote, board meetings attended by many women drag on because they talk too much, end of quote. You know, the hashtag don't be silent, or hashtag wakimaenai onna, which can be translated to something like women who don't understand their place, perhaps, quickly took off. And many voiced their anger and resentment. And you also decided to be vocal. Now, what compelled you to take part in the movement?
Well, I mean, it's sad to hear from Mr. Mori that after all of the year of hashtag #MeToo, and after many talks and news coverage, and you know, we haven't seen him, you know, learn from what happened in the past. So, you know, of course we were angry, not just because he said that part, just because it hasn't changed over a year and many years. And so, you know, him stepping down, I don't think it wouldn't change the issue, or it wouldn't solve the issue. He also say that he often hear that, you know, his committee is saying the same thing, so that's why he's saying, meaning the committee itself is talking in the same way. So it is a big issue, but meaning it has been talked about, you know, top level of, you know, JOC, but it is within our daily life as well, and small organizations for sure. And that is why it triggered many people's, you know, anger.
What did you think the news said about our society? You said that it's not just about the close meetings at the JOC, but perhaps it's about the society in general.
It's in our structure, in our system. It's embedded in a deep way. So I was shocked when I saw his so-called apologized, press conference, because I don't think he had a meeting with his team. What was wrong with what he had said? He didn't clearly understand. And till today, I don't think he understood what was wrong. And I am so sad that his team also didn't talk about it, seems like, to him. And that is a main issue. That seems like, I thought, seeing the news, we talked about it so many times, but seems like there are certain people that haven't care about it too much. So, and what he have said about women talks too much, it means that he doesn't want to listen to them. If he listened to what these women were saying with interest, I don't think he would ever felt that they were speaking too long. So I think that shows a lot of his perspective on women.
Right. And as the IOC statement articulated, it's really about inclusion and diversity and gender equality that is at the core of the issue, isn't it? And as you say, that there's so much work that we still need to do.
So much work. And I mean, if Mr. Mori is stepping down, what I wish is that him trying to, study from his mistake and bring the awareness why he have done so, why he have said that, to really have a time to think of his past and his, responsibility. So if we can hear that from him in one day, I think then we can say that we made a step. But it doesn't make any change, just him quitting. It's not just him.
It's a sort of a message to all of us, perhaps, the society. I see. That there have been questions regarding this news as well. But first, we'd like to hear from you, Shiori-san, with your initial remarks.
So I'm, like what you quoted, there were hashtag don't be silent after what Mr. Mori said. And I think one of the best label that I got many labels as a, victim, as, survivor, but one of the best label I think I got was silence flaker. When I heard that words, I was so empowered, because myself, growing up in Japan, I have been silenced to so many years and didn't know how to raise my voice. So when I heard that term, I was so empowered. And people say that I, sparked hashtag Me Too, but I actually talked about my own experience on sexual violence 6 months before the Me Too movement happened. So for me, I felt quite isolated until the Me Too movement happened. I felt the reaction from the public was quite, I guess people couldn't understand why I wanted to talk about the experience. And some said, if you are true Japanese woman, you wouldn't talk about such as shameful things. But that's the thing. That's how we have been silenced. So I decided to, voice out and talk about the thing that I never want to share with anyone. And it was 2017. And the law has changed, but the part that of what we wanted changed the most, which was about consent. Non-consensual sex is rape. It's almost becoming international standard, but it's not in our law, our sex offense law. And right now I have really many emotions, because after they have a big changed after in 2017, after, it hasn't changed for past 110 years, it finally changed, but they didn't put the part of consent. And they were given us that we have 3 years to review it. So right now, since last year, there is a committee to talk about what we need to change, what we need to update. And we have, I think next month, March, they are closing the committee and decides what they're going to update. And I just got a message from one of the members saying that, Shiori, I don't think we are making progress on consent. So seems like if the conversation continued this way, it wouldn't change. And that was shocking. After all 3 years of, hearing many voices from survivors, many stories of Me Too, we haven't learned that anything if they don't change the law, structure our lifestyle, daily life. And if, they don't put the part of consent, I don't know what I sacrificed for. So right now, today, thinking about how we can do more than, there are petitions going on online, and I want people to encourage to do so. But what else can we do? And so today I'm very, I have many mixed emotions being with you.
Thank you very much. And of course, living in the pandemic, where meeting people or organized gathering for the purpose that you have just articulated has become even more difficult. So transforming the mindset of the people and transforming the norm of society that may ultimately influence the legal structure. That part has become even more difficult. Would you think so?
I think so, yeah. And I mean, you know, I think after this pandemic in Japan, we start using hashtag to raise voices, which is amazing change that we've been witness. So again, I want us to really think if we, if we can't change the law, what can happen in our daily life, in our lifestyle, who can protect our rights of our body. So I hope in the end of this session, we have better idea than petition. Yeah.
Okay. But like you said, sexist remarks are not new, unfortunately. What are the social norms behind such comments, do you think?
Well, so as I said, I've been told that if I'm a true Japanese woman, I guess Asian women, they don't talk about this thing, which is, I feel that there are a huge taboo in this topic, especially for victims to speak up. And unfortunately, last year, our lawmaker, our MP, Mio Sugita, also said that women lies and over the sexual accusation. And that was sad that, our lawmaker even say so. And so there are a strong stigma against it still today.
And some cases, some people can be let off the hook by saying that it was just a slip of the tongue. Would you agree?
No, of course not. And if, we know it's not because of, let's say, how Mr. Mori apologized as well, how he didn't recognize what was wrong with his, what he had said. So no, and we can't just say like that. So, okay, he quit, move on. We can't just let that happen ever again. So this is great time, great opportunity to really highlight these issues.
And I also felt that the fact that there is a hashtag movement, Don't Be Silenced, is created out of the shared understanding that being silent is equally guilty. Do you think that understanding or the mindset is widely being shared today?
I hope so. And, I think one of the reasons why hashtag MeToo didn't become a huge movement in Japan is because people are so worried and, it's scary what can happen after you as a survivor say something, So, and as what I experienced, online harassment, online violence with all these horrible, nasty words towards me, I witnessed. So what needs to happen is, we all can be bystander. And what can we do about it? We need to also, raise our voice because one day it can happen to you. And so me and my friends, we started to think, how can Me Too be voiced out in Japan? And we thought we have to say we too. So we shouldn't, let anyone to be a victim or bystander. And of course, perpetrator, but bystander is the majority of it. So that's why we have to say something. Right. But I see the changes now online.
And it's not just about like you are witnessing a violent sexual assault in front of your eyes. It's often the case of like, some sexist comments being made during the meeting, or some bullying happening in the classroom, or some forms of sexual harassment taking place in offices. And there you have the option of whether you remain silent or speak up. And I think that is something that many of us would face in our daily lives.
Exactly.
It's not a really critical moment, but like those moments in our lives where we are forced to make decisions, choices ourselves. So we are sort of tested in our daily lives as well.
Exactly.
In that sense.
I think that showed a lot within in what Mr. Mori said, because when he had said the women talks a lot, people around him laughed. That shouldn't happen. If they have the mind of bystander, knowing it's not it's not okay, then they should have said, hey, I don't think it was appropriate, and you shouldn't say that. But we didn't hear that word. So yeah, it can start from our daily conversation to our meeting any time in a day.
True. You talked about the movement, like Me Too, growing into a We Too movement. This Don't Be Silent # movement, is it a predominantly younger generation movement? How do you see?
I mean, I don't think it. I mean, what I feel whenever I talk about sexual violence in Japan, in the beginning, I felt not many young people were involved. But these days, I see the difference. They use hashtag, and also it's, I think, because media have been highlighting this issue as well. And so, yeah, I don't think it's just the young people, but they have amazing voices and they know how to use the social network platforms to do so.
Okay. You are said to be the driving force of Me Too movement in Japan, and then you've constantly said that it should be a We Too movement. But as a survivor and also a journalist, what kind of support is lacking in Japan, do you think?
Well, I think still today, it's only a few percent, about 4%, who would go to report to police after the experience of rape. And it's because there are a huge, we are lacking this victim support system. So, for instance, there is Rape Crisis Center. Let's say I've been visiting different places in Sweden, London, and Taiwan. But if you go there, even in our neighbor South Korea as well, if you go there, they will help you to report to police. If you go there, you get support for physical treatment, test, and also mental support, psychological support. But in Japan, I can't say that it's fully provided. And that's where I had a struggle with as well. And, so it's also, the social support as well, but it's a lot to do with our education as well, I think.
Because in some schools or some study groups, the people are making an effort to reach out to a younger generation to sort of let them know, what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And what is your right? How can education address this very important but sensitive issue?
So the problem right now is that in Japanese education, it is what lawmakers have to change in our Ministry of Education. But today, the only way we can bring the decent sex education is asking someone from outside, because in teachers' textbook, teachers' rule book, do you call that? I don't know.
The guidelines.
Guideline. It's written that you can only teach after the spermate egg. You know, so they don't teach about sex. They don't teach, of course, about consent, what happened before.
It's like a biology class.
Exactly. And so what can we learn from that? We really need to talk about consent. What's the right for you? What's the right for others? And how important it is to talk about, to care about. So it's lacking that from the teacher's guidelines. So how can they teach? They have to risk their own, sake to do so, to step into it. So I think it's a lot to do with our Ministry of Education, but also this sex education can also start from, the family as well, or locally. So I think there are ways to use. There are amazing YouTubers who's doing so-called. Her name is Shiori Ito. We're same name, Shiori, and she's providing amazing YouTube videos. So there are ways to do so, I think. But if we don't have the idea of consent in our law, and if we don't teach people about idea of consent, I don't think we can ever make a progress on this issue, unfortunately.
True. And then you often talk about the social norms that prevent women from speaking up, raising their voices. I can understand because many years back I have the experience of attending a United Nations Population Fund on reproductive rights, and there were journalists from like South Asia or African countries who shared with me their concern, saying that in their society you just cannot discuss issues related to gender or sex or contraception or rape or in public. And it's a big challenge for journalists. You want to convey the news, you want to report the news. But then there is this social norm that goes something like, women should blush when they talk about these issues. That can intimidate women from speaking up. So how do we break that barrier, the social norm that can intimidate women from speaking up?
We just have to speak about it. And what I wanted to do when I spoke about my own experience was that, before I went to press conference, even my friends or the journalists, senior journalists told me that I should wear certain clothes to speak about it. I should behave a certain way so they would trust me. And that's what I was hearing from even police officer investigators, that they questioned me that if you don't cry enough, you don't get upset, so we can't believe you. Of course I'm upset, but I have to just stay strong. And it was so shocking that they have certain idea of victim that they can trust. So what I decided was, whenever I'm speaking in public, I just behave myself. I don't want to wear this, mask of victim, because we live everyday life. We're the same as you are. But unfortunately, I still hear the words, victim don't smile, or something like that. It's unbelievable. So I think we just have to be able to talk about it. And that's what Metoo did. And I was so happy to see Flower Demo, very peaceful protest against demanding change in our sex offense law, because I think it was the first time in public people come with flower in their hands and start sharing their own experience. I haven't seen that in public. I never seen that. So I think it's happening in Japan as well, so that they have space to be able to talk about it. So we just have to talk about it. We can't hide it.
You might have to start from something small, but it can grow into something bigger with an impact, perhaps. And this Me Too movement originated in the United States, but how do you plan to sort of cooperate with the similar movements that might exist in Asian countries? Do you have any plans to cooperate with them, or do you have any plans?
Well, I have been visiting, our neighbor countries to discuss about that. And because we have very similar background, not being able to talk about this issue, and also having really the law has been a huge wall in front of us, so on. But I also see the progressive action in other country. So what we can do is, I think we can exchange what they're doing in a good way, what we are doing, what was successful, how did we push that to, the law to be executed, and so on. So because we shared similar background, social norm, there are so many ways to share it. What I have experienced in South Korea was significant because we shared similar law, but their social movement was such a different take. People would go on the street to demand for the rights. I wonder why that didn't happen in the same way in Japan. But there are many reasons historically as well. But I think it's so inspiring to see others what they're doing. So there are many ways that we can share and be inspired. Yeah.
Right. And in the coronavirus world, you might have to be even more creative in sort of organizing a movement. You are a journalist and also a film director, and I wanted to ask you, what issues or topics you want to focus on, and the message that you want to continue to convey.
So, me and my friend, who's a Swedish journalist, created the company called Hanashi Films in London, and our motto is to shed the lights on the gender-based human rights issues, and it's very broad issue actually. But what I want to do through documentary film, the storytelling through the film, is that I want to show about someone's life and also reflect to ours, because what I realized working in a newsroom, sometimes just information goes through and consume, and that's it. There's no face, no name on it. So through documentary film, I think they have power to know this person, to get to know what's issue behind it, what social issue behind it, and sometimes it can feel more personal. But I mean, every cases are personal. So I want to focus on creating documentary films on the gender issue.
But traveling has become almost impossible. How do you cope with not being able to travel to actually cover the issues in the field?
It's frustrating because the last trip I made was Sierra Leone a year ago. It's frustrating because I know, when the pandemic happened, the violence against women and children increased. And actually, when Sierra Leone, when the what was the pandemic that they had before? Ebola happened. Sexual violence against kids increased because they couldn't go to school, so they stayed in community. So it's frustrating that we can't really cover hands-on. But again, we have now social network that we can share. So I felt like using the internet, talking to people, if there is only enough internet connection, though, made possible for us to connect borderless. So that is great result. But still today, especially filmmaking process, you need to go there and film. So it is frustrating that we can't do that now.
I've recently interviewed Dr. Mukwege, who is the Nobel Peace Prize laureate, who's worked tirelessly on sexual violence against women. And he, like you, said that in the pandemic, already vulnerable people are becoming even more vulnerable, or because of the lockdown, or because the economy not picking up, which is a really serious situation. So we need to keep an eye on that situation as well. And I noticed that you have produced a story on FGM, the female genital mutilation.
Yes.
What was the reason why you wanted to choose that topic?
So the reason why I went to Sierra Leone firsthand was because to interview why sexual violence against kids during Ebola time happened. So that was the reason I went there. But then I met girls and they start talking about FGM, and I got to know that 90% of women and girls have been experienced this painful experience, and it was shocking. So I met amazing two young girls who wanted to change that through radio. So I decided to make a documentary film about that.
And I watched the film.
Thank you.
And at first I thought that you were covering the issue, the problem. But you were trying to portray the girls themselves, the sort of life that they're leading, what their families say, the sort of living conditions that they are facing. Is that the style you want to take when you cover such issue?
Yeah, because I myself, a journalist and a filmmaker, who is always behind the camera, but because I spoke about my own experience, I had to position myself in front of the camera, and I learned how violent that can be, and also how the media can portray you. So what I wish is really portray a person as who they are, including their daily life. So that this person isn't just a victim. They have name, they have sisters, they have mother, they have loving people around them. And when you see that, I think you can start thinking, she's looking like my sister, and you feel more familiar towards the problem. And one of the comment that I got after screening the short clips of my film towards a Japanese university student, she said that she felt like she has been mentally FGM'd in Japan.
So she felt the pain.
The idea of FGM is, in Sierra Leone at least, is becoming a complete woman. So you can be recognized in society. In some work, they only can be offered who's been through this process. So it is a ticket. It's like becoming of the age thing. But it's risking many girls' life, and it can, it can create the physical issue, but also it mentally, psychologically can traumatize women and girls. So because just the idea of this is how women should be, and thankfully we don't have the practice in Japan, but there is a certain norm, certain shape that a society really creating. This is how Japanese women should behave.
Right. And the shocking part was that before this event started, we were chatting in the corridor, and you said that those norms do not necessarily be imposed by men. The women can proactively take part in creating that social norm. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So on FGM, speaking about FGM again, is it's being executed by a women's society in Sierra Leone, just because what the mother wants to make their daughter suitable for the society, so they can't be kicked out, so they can get a job, they can get married. So knowing they're putting their loved one in a risk, they still do so. And
to fit into the mold, sort of thing.
And I even interviewed who is the cutter of FGM, and she even says that there's nothing good about FGM, but it's tradition. You have to follow that to survive, she said. And that was shocking, that the social pressure is making that happen.
Okay. And I also noted that the title had episode 1. So does it mean that you have many more stories in the pipeline?
So actually, we are trying to make it as a feature film, so that it can be played out in film festivals and in a long way. So what the short films that I made is bearable actually only in Japan, unfortunately, just because we are trying to develop this idea, this film in a longer term, because we want to follow these two girls creating radio show. They're trying their best to do so, knowing it's quite dangerous to speak about this. So we want to support from domestic, we want to support what they're doing, but also internationally. And that's how I've been helped from outside as well. It was so difficult to talk about from Japan, from inside, about topic of sexual violence. But when I stepped outside, I could find different way to talk about it. So that's what we are trying to do.
And it was quite impressive that those girls were speaking in the class. That they were going to schools and talking to young students and pupils why FGM is not good for you. That you should say no when it's about to happen to you. So they themselves are trying to become an agent of change.
They are the change. Yes, I see a huge hope from them, and I think seeing these role models for younger generation is very important. And so, I wish we can promote that as well through the film.
True. But like these gender-based human rights abuse, when they happen, there are journalists who keep an eye on those issues and keep covering the issue. Among the other journalists, what difference do you think you can make in covering such issues?
Well, I think, this documentary filmmaking for me is all about Gwen. How do you translate that?
The encounter,
yeah. I meet these people and I want to tell their story because I empathize with it. And so, I think if you have passion of that, everyone can make the film, or everyone can tell the story. But I think I have experience of being the other side, to be covered, to be victimized as well. I think I know the pain, and also every time what I try to discuss with people, whoever I'm filming with, is what can happen afterwards. Because sometimes we don't have control of the story when it's, leave our hands.
Right.
So what kind of outcome can it come? So that's something that, I think personally I had a hard lesson to learn with. So I talk about that a lot with.
I see.
Yeah.
So that's one way of raising voice. Okay. We have many questions. So let's have the first question from the fellows. The first one is from Sarah Hussain, partner Dr. Kamal Hussain and Associates, and barrister practicing at the Supreme Court of Bangladesh. She is also Asia Society Asia 21 Fellow. She says, how do you plan to link up with survivors against sexual violence in other Asian countries and with feminists and their allies who have been engaged in protest and activism?
Amazing question. I actually want to know because I think in Japan, let's say, we are quite built up on hierarchy society, and it's not just about men and women. It's also within a women. We have to use certain way to speak. And sometimes I feel when we talk about this issue, we need to be equal. We need to be frankly, casually talk about it. And sometimes I find it difficult to speak about it in Japanese because I feel like I'm limited in this language. So whenever I can talk this with, internationally and in occasion outside of Japan, I feel easier to talk about this issue and be connected with solidarity. So I think we have to find a way and opportunity to do so, because mixing up is very important, because this issue doesn't happen just because of this area or age, just because you're women, men, it can happen for men,
Right.
of course, LGBTQ community, of course. So we just have to really mix up and start having conversation. So yeah, let's create one. Maybe we can start.
Maybe you can get in touch with Sarah for this.
Yeah.
And the next question is from Ryoko Yonamine, Officer, Gender Mainstream Division of Foreign Policy Bureau, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan. She's also Nitobe Leadership Fellow at International House of Japan. What has changed in Japan since your work, your battle, started in 2016? And she says, hopefully Japan has changed in a positive way. Could you share your experiences and thoughts?
Okay. So I think we can count from maybe 2017 when I first spoke about my experience in public. I think the biggest change I witnessed was media. As a journalist, it was unthinkable to cover or investigate my own story. It's just so biased, let's say. Let's face it. But that was the only way to do it, because I spoke to other, journalist friends. How can we highlight this issue? Despite what my experience was, but it was still difficult. But after Me Too movement happened, the journalists have been writing about this issue more. I realized my niche newspaper, they actually quoted, New York Times wrote about Shiori Ito, because they could never really handle this case as a case. They could have maybe introduced my book, but because my case was dropped in the criminal case, it became a hard wall for journalists to report. But I questioned them, as a journalist, we need to examine the law, how the law have applied, how the law have, failed. We can't just, be a mouth of, whatever authorities said. So it was disappointing before that they can't do so just because of the decision. But now I think it has changed, and thanks to international movement. So I slowly but surely it's changing.
And I'll go on to the next question, which comes from Malaysia. This is from Karen Lai Yu Lee, Program Director, Women's Center for Change, Penang, Malaysia. She is the Asia Leadership Fellows Program Fellow at the iHouse. Victim blaming in sexual assault is prevalent across Asia, fueled by religious conservatism and patriarchal social cultural norms. What, in your experience, has been a powerful or effective counter-response?
I am still in the mess of this storm of stigma and online abuse. So I don't know if I have the best answer, but I think believing in your truth makes you strong. And because I have that, I just, talk about and speak about what I believe in. And that's it, to be myself. And it is difficult to speak about this issue, especially when you're in a society where often this issue are silenced or stigmatized. But again, what did we do wrong? Nothing. So all I can encourage is just, be yourself. You haven't done nothing wrong. Believe that.
We do have questions from our audience live from chat. One is, why do you think the Me Too movement has not really taken off in Japan?
So I was born in 1989, Heisei 1 era. And that was, every year in Japan, we have like the buzzwords awards. So whatever the words has been used, new words, they celebrate it. So 89 was sexual harassment, sekhara, because they had the first sexual harassment court case happen 31 years ago. But we haven't developed any sexual harassment law after 31 years. So if you encounter that experience in workplace, what can you do? There's not much protection, and legal-wise, you maybe can lose your job still today. So it is hard for people to say so because we don't have the support system legally. I think it's one of the big reasons. And then I would just want to highlight, I was born in that time, that year, and I lived in it. And it's about time to really look what's missing. I think one of the biggest one is the law. But of course, it's also starting from people's minds. So it's a lot to do with media as well and education.
And then the next question is, how can men participate in the Me Too movement and support victims? It's a very important question.
I mean, look, men can be a victim too. And they, I think, feel more silenced because, it's not, before 2017, male victims weren't considered as a rape victim. I can't believe that just changed. So, I mean, it can happen to them as well. And I think I always say that imagine this can happen to you, but also to your loved one, your sister, your mother, your daughter. And I think they can start like what we discussed in a small way in a daily life. If you see sexual harassment on the meeting room, let's say, you can just, if you don't know what to say, then you can just, snap off your glass, split the water. Maybe they will stop it, any small encounter. So just be active bystander. But also being silenced means that you're taking, you're losing your chance to, stop the violence. And also you might be the one who's encouraging the violence. So I want them to be aware. And there's so many ways they can encounter.
Right. So men can also actively take part in the movement. Okay. The next question is, what makes you so strong and determined to maintain who you are?
I am not strong. I have many breakdown time, and I am still struggling. I actually can't open my mailbox anymore because every time I open, I see the words that I wish I haven't seen in our daily life. I still get all the threats and nasty words in daily life, and now in pandemic, I can't live without online, and it's been a big issue. But I found a way that I have now amazing team that can help me to open my mailbox so that I can keep my work going. But I'm still finding my way. I actually, but as a survivor of sexual violence, what helped me was run. First, when I started running, I only could run for 3K, and then I could run for 5K, and now today I can run for 20K.
Wow!
And the feeling that what I felt like once I lost my control of my body, and once I gained that control, I can do this more and more physically, that really empowered me. So doing the sport, yoga helped me as well. And so, that's challenging, physically has been helping me.
Wow. I think it makes you physically healthy as well. As well as emotionally.
Yeah.
So, the next question is about your filmmaking. As a female Japanese documentary filmmaker, how did you see start of your career? What is your advice to women in Japan who want to start a career in documentary filmmaking as a tool for social change?
I think when you are passionate about telling a story, you can always start anytime. As I said before, I think I started because I felt just giving the news is very important for us handling information, but we need to know who's behind it, who is in it. And that's why I think documentary filmmaking is very strong tool to tell that story, not just with the number, statistic, but there is a person behind it. But unfortunately, I think in Japan, there are not many platforms where you can, where they take it. I have to say, there are not many platforms. But nowadays, there are online documentary platforms like Yahoo. I've been creating a short documentary called on Yahoo Creators Program. And so, and it's actually easier to start because they are always looking for a story within 10 minutes. So I encourage to start from there. Maybe.
I see. And the next question is about your book. How was your book received in Japan, and how do you expect it to make a change into the awareness of women?
So I published my book in 2017, October, when Metoo movement was happening around the world. And I remember the first email I received after releasing the book was from women, and it wasn't very supportive one. She said, as a female Japanese, she's shamed on me. So it was shocking to see how different the reaction is. But over 3 years, I received negative comments as well. But over 3 years, I realized that they just didn't have. They were just people who support about this book, or knowing the importance of highlighting this issue. They were thinking within their heart. I just didn't have a sixth sense. So now I know there are supporters. And now my book, recently it was released in Italian, and this year it's going to be released in English. And the great thing is that I never received any negative comments in English or in other language. So it's encouraging.
I see. So many people continue to listen to you.
Because it's the issue is not only in Japan. It's very global, universal. So
true. And the next question, which might be our last question, is about the system. Do you think that quota systems setting reserved seats for women in Diet is effective to improve gender issues?
For sure. The reason why we ranked 121 in gender gap ranking is because we are lacking women in our lawmakers. So yes, for sure. I mean, again, law forms our life. And if there are lacking of certain, it's not only about, women. We need people from different background to really talk about what's needed. Because, in Japan, I recently feel so uncomfortable knowing people myself use the word of futsu, normal, maybe you can directly translate.
Normal or average or
standard but then we use too often, and I question, like, whose standard is that? Whose normal is that? I think what we are talking normal is just really a big picture of our male-dominated society normal. So we have to stop using the normal, because there's no normal for everyone. And there are points that we have to maybe raise our eyebrows in our language as well. I love how Japanese can create such a beautiful, way of saying as well, but sometimes it's too vague. So I start realizing that knowing there's no way, for instance, we can say no in Japanese. They are saying no means yes, no means no. So let's keep pushing for that.
Right. And I do have the impression that, like our last question about creating a quota in the system, we say, people think this is like women's issue, like gender issue that we are discussing, but it's really about like diversity and inclusion. And I really think that we should never lose that. We have to remember to keep that perspective whenever we address this gender-based issues. It's about that time that I have to wrap up, sadly. So thank you very much, Shiori-san, for taking the time to share with us your views. And although we don't see each and every viewers who have tuned in to listen in from various parts of the world, I do know that the size of the audience that we have today tells us that people not only care about the issue, which is fundamentally about creating a society that embraces diversity and human rights as values, but they will keep on caring about this issue as they live their everyday life. And there is certainly a sense of sisterhood or brotherhood or sense of solidarity. And this is certainly a force that will keep us going as we live through this challenging time.
Amazing.
So thank you very much. And
Thank you.
I'm sure people are joining me in giving you a big round of applause. Thank you very much. ありがとうございます. And our thanks goes to co-organizers and sponsors. The series is made possible by Asia Society Japan Center, Mitsubishi UFJ Research and Consulting, Shahani Associates, the Japan Foundation Asia Center, MRA Foundation, Tanaka UK Japan Educational Foundation. And a little bit about our next session. The next session will be on March the 5th, 6 o'clock Japan time, on LGBTQ+ in Asia. Speakers are Fumino Sugiyama, CEO New Canvas, and Jennifer Liu, Executive Director of Taiwan Equality Campaign. I hope that you will tune in again for another round of engaging conversation. Thank you and goodbye from Tokyo.